So, skill 15, using factoring to solve a quadratic equation. If you have two amounts that are being multiplied and their product equals 0, then either of those two multiplying amounts, those two factors, must equal 0, so you can solve equations that way if they're factored. For the first one, it's already factored, so you know that x plus 3 times x plus 7 equals 0. If these two multiplying equals 0, that means that either the first one equals 0, x plus 3, so that's one equation we'll solve, or x minus 7 equals 0. To solve x plus 3 equals 0, I can subtract 3 to both sides, and I get one solution, which is x equals negative 3. The other equation, I can add 7 to both sides, and my solution is x equals 7. So I have two solutions for this equation. If I put in x is negative 3 in both places for x, I'll get 0 for an answer, or if I substitute in 7, I'll get 0. So my two solutions are negative 3 and 7. The second one is also already factored, and it equals 0. My two factors are x and x plus 6. Those are multiplied to equal 0. So either the first factor equals 0, x equals 0, or the second factor equals 0, x plus 6 equals 0. This is already solved for x, so my one solution is x equals 0. To solve the second equation for x, I subtract 6 to both sides, and I get x equals negative 6. So I have two solutions for that problem, both 0 and negative 6. Letter C, it equals 0, but it's not factored. So I need to factor x squared plus 4x plus 3. This factors into the product of two binomials that look like this. It's going to be x plus 3 and x plus 1. And once it's written in factored form, I know that if I multiply these two and it equals 0, that either x plus 3 equals 0 or x plus 1 equals 0. So one equation to solve is x plus 3 equals 0. The other one is x plus 1 equals 0. To solve the first one, I subtract 3 to both sides, and I get x equals negative 3. There's one of my solutions. The other equation, I subtract 1 to both sides, and I get a solution of x equals negative 1. So my two solutions are negative 3 and negative 1 for that problem. The next one equals 0, but it's not factored, and x squared minus 16 factors into two binomials, and they look like this. One of them is x plus 4 and one of them is x minus 4. If the factoring part is challenging for you, then that's one place you'll want to get help before you try these problems. So I have either x plus 4 and x minus 4 multiplied equals 0, so either x plus 4 equals 0 or x minus 4 equals 0. Those are my two equations to solve. So I solve the first one by subtracting 4 to both sides, and I get a solution of x equals negative 4. I solve the second one by adding 4 to both sides, and I get a solution of x equals 4. So I have two solutions for this example, both positive 4 and negative 4. Letter E, the equation does not equal 0, and because it's using x squared, we're going to factor it. I want to first have it equal 0 before I factor it and then solve it. So I want to add 3 to both sides to make this minus 3 become a 0. So I have 2x squared minus 7x plus 3, and that equals 0. And then I first factor it. One factor is going to be 2x. This is going to be an x. And if I want positive 3 here but minus 7x in the middle, I'm going to have to do minus 1 and minus 3. And that factors and would multiply out to give me my original 2x squared minus 7x plus 3. And now these two multiply equals 0. So that means either this equation, 2x minus 1 equals 0, or this equation, x minus 3 equals 0. To solve the first one, I add 1 to both sides, and I get 2x equals 1. And then I divide both sides by 2, and I get x equals a half. So there's one of my solutions. Second equation, I add 3 to both sides to get x by itself, and my solution is x equals 3. So I have two solutions, 1/2 and 3, for the last problem. So that's skill 15. Here are some examples that you can work on. So study these 5, and then when you're ready, work on these 5, pause the camera, and work those 5 out, and then watch the rest of the video to see how you did. Alright, I'm assuming that you spent time finishing these 5 problems. So here are the solutions to these 5. The first one, I noticed it equals 0 and it's already factored, so I can write 2 smaller equations to solve. Either x minus 4 equals 0 or x plus 9 equals 0. To solve the first one, add 4 to both sides of the equation, I get x equals 4. To solve the second one, I subtract 9 to both sides of the equation, I get x equals 9. So I have 2 solutions, either positive 4, or negative 9. The second one, it's already factored. I have 2 amounts multiplied equal to 0. So I can say that either factor equals 0. So either x equals 0 or 3x minus 5 equals 0. This is already solved for x. So x equals 0 is one of my solutions. The other one I need to solve for x. So I add 5 to both sides. And I get 3x equals 5. If I divide both sides by 3, I get 5/3 for x, so my other solution is x equals 5/3. So 2 solutions for that equation, both 0 and 5/3. The next one doesn't equal 0, so I need to take this 28 and do minus 28 to both sides to make it equal to 0. So I end up with x squared minus 3x minus 28 equals 0. Factor this. It's going to factor into x and x to give me the x squared. And to get 28 I can do 7 and 4. So if I do minus 7 and plus 4, that's going to give me the minus 3x and the minus 28. So either of these 2 factors must equal 0. So either x minus 7 equals 0 or x plus 4 equals 0. To solve this one, I add 7 to both sides of the equal sign, and I get x equals 7. To solve the second equation, I subtract 4 to both sides, and I get x equals negative 4. So my 2 solutions for letter C are 7 and negative 4. Next one, it equals 0, it's not factored. X squared minus 81 factors into x plus 9, x minus 9. These kinds of problems that factor are called the difference of 2 squares. They both equal 0. So I write those 2 equations, because if I multiply and the answer is 0, one or the other one of these must be 0 itself. To solve the first one for x, I subtract 9 to both sides, and I get x equals negative 9. To solve the second equation for x, I add 9 to both sides, and I get x equals 9. So my 2 solutions are negative 9 and positive 9. Letter E, it equals 0. I need to factor it. So I put in my parentheses, and to get 3x squared, it's going to be 3x and x. That's going to be my 3x squared. I want minus 16x and plus 5. So I probably want to do a minus 1 and a minus 5, because that's going to be minus 16x and a positive 5. So I have my 2 factors. These 2 multiplied equals 0. So that means either 3x minus 1 equals 0 or x minus 5 equals 0. So I solve those 2 equations for x. The first one, add 1 to both sides, and I get 3x equals 1. Divide both sides by 3 to get x by itself, and my solution is x equals 1/3. So there's one of my solutions. The other one, solve this equation for x, add 5 to both sides, and I get x equals 5. So my 2 solutions for that last problem, x equals 1/3 and x equals 5. And that's the end of Skill 15.